Welcome to the Warning Track Power Hour. I am Dr. Andrew Scaff. He is Dr. Michael Werman, Esquire. We're going to talk today about the NFL's Week 8 games that happened last weekend. And then we'll get into some preview of Week 9 towards the end of the show. And we'll talk a little bit about the World Series a little bit later, too. But we'll start this episode probably in a place just so that we can get through it quickly and not have to talk about it and linger on it for very long. Mike, the Chiefs had a disastrous Week 8 game against the Broncos. But there were a lot of circumstances that may have led to their bad week. Weather wasn't good. Mahomes was under the weather himself. Players, again, like having trouble controlling the ball. Are you concerned with the team, or are you willing to write this off as just a bunch of circumstances that led up to a bad game and then just move on? Let's just move on from it.
Well, it's a little of both, I think, because I think the first game against Detroit, it seemed like it was more a bunch of crazy circumstances, like horrible receiver play, like giving Detroit a touchdown, Kelsey being out, Chris Jones being out. So there's a lot of that. There's a little bit of that this week, I think, with Mahomes being ill, and then also then like 5 turnovers for like no apparent reason. Mahomes threw a couple of picks that weren't very good. You know, he had that fumble, which is very unusual for him when he was sacked.
He hasn't really been being sacked a whole lot.
No. He just seemed like he would, like, I'm sure like he could like be okay for brief periods, but then probably after exerting himself, he wasn't the same, especially also being in the mile high altitude. That also probably affected it. But it's also one of those things where Denver had been beaten so many times in a row. It has to, at some point, Denver has to win those games, or one of the games. So maybe it's good that they won this time, but I think it also doesn't bode well for the offense because the defense played well again. The defense played well enough to win. They allowed 24 points, but that was allowing 5 turnovers, and a couple of those turnovers were deep into Chiefs territory. So it was the muff punt. You know, it was a lot of bad stuff. So Hardman, as good as he was the week before, was bad this week. The wide receivers were basically not there. Sky Moore missed an easy touchdown that would have kept the Chiefs in the game. You know, so there were a lot of things that, I don't know. There was just a lot of things that went wrong, and it wasn't like Denver really outplayed the Chiefs in a lot of ways, except on the turnover side of things. So it's concerning that the Chiefs can't score very easily a lot of times. And so I don't know if that's a Matt Nagy thing, if that's simply a offense that is becoming more predictable or isn't innovative enough anymore type of thing. Mahomes seems to be putting the ball into the other team's arms a lot more this year than previous years. So I think he's on pace for more interceptions this year than ever. So so I think it all depends. If they play well against Miami, it's just a blip. If they don't play that well against Miami, it's maybe the start of a worrying trend. And so we have to wait for another game to see whether it means something or not, I think.
Well, I'm not sure that the Miami game in Germany is really like a good test of what is or is not the team this season, because it's another one of those weird things. Like, they're having to travel so far. It's against a team they've got kind of a personal grudge, a little bit at least, with Tyreek Hill being there.
Yeah.
And, you know, everybody's always gunning for the Chiefs all the time because they are the current champs, the defending champs. So I don't really know if that's really a true test, if the team is good or not good. So, I mean, they could be flat again and still not mean anything. I think this game, I think the Chiefs still outperformed Denver, like in the statistics and everything except turnovers. And that's really what did them in anyway. So
yeah, they have a bye after this week, so maybe you could say, well, if they don't play well, they can regroup after the bye. But you would like to see the Chiefs play well going into the bye, and maybe see Mahomes be healthy and start, throwing for like he did against the Chargers. He threw for over 400 yards, and he threw, a lot of touchdowns. Maybe he can do, I'd like to see something like that again. Miami has a decent defense, but I think they're a lot, the team itself, Miami, is much more like the Chargers than they are like the Broncos. Despite what the Miami's record is very lofty compared to the Los Angeles, but like those two teams played each other very close. They each have a quarterback that's pretty good. They each have good weapons on the outside. They're fast, and they have a defense that's kind of flashy, but probably not, the best either. So I think maybe the Chiefs match up better against the Dolphins than they do against the Broncos right now. They even though they keep beating the Broncos, they don't seem to match up terribly well against Denver. Like they didn't play that well in the game a couple weeks back. They only won 19-8 or whatever, but
Yeah.
they still couldn't. They had trouble scoring, and I hope they don't have trouble scoring again. So I'm a little worried about the offense. They didn't get anybody at the trade deadline. Do you think they should have gone after one of the wide receivers, or do you think Hardman is enough? There were rumors maybe they were trying to get rid of Richie James, who was kind of maybe expendable now that Hardman is there, but maybe with some of the Justin Ross issues, maybe James can find his way back on the roster when he's off the IR.
Yeah. I mean, unless they found somebody that they, really would slot in really highly in the wide receiver room. I don't know that there really was anybody out there to go for. Was there? Did anybody else get picked up?
Well, I think people thought maybe DeAndre Hopkins would be on the trade.
But he didn't. He didn't get traded though, right?
No, because and partly I think that's because Levis played so well in his game against the Falcons, and wasn't it the Falcons they played against? And
yeah,
and so I think maybe that changed Tennessee's. I think Tennessee maybe was looking to sell if that game had gone poorly, but they didn't. I think some of the other, a lot of the other teams that maybe were looking to sell, we thought, well, the Broncos might have been, but then they won that game against the Chiefs, and they aren't going to trade their guys to their divisional opponents. The Raiders aren't going to trade their best wide receiver to the Chiefs. So it's a lot of the players that the Chiefs maybe were, the idea that they maybe were looking at were either divisional rivals or on teams that ended up maybe not selling. Like maybe thought, maybe Hollywood Brown, but it still takes those receivers a long time to learn Reed's system in the off. It takes them an off season usually, and so I don't know if anybody they could bring in other than somebody like Hardman would actually help them, because you have to be familiar with that playbook.
Yeah. And one of the things that always been driving me crazy about the team and just in general is I don't even know why they bother really returning kicks for the most
part.
Maybe like pick one a game that they plan on returning, but the rest of them just just catch it and secure it and just take,
or don't. If it's a punt, you don't have to, just try to block it. And if it doesn't work, well, they're going to punt it and they're going to down it somewhere. Who cares? Or just have a guy back there
and don't fumble it. That's
yeah. Or like on the kickoff, like if it goes in the end zone, let it go. Don't run it out, because you're only going to get, at best, you're probably only going to get the 22, and probably somebody's going to get hurt on the return, and
and a penalty of some kind too.
And a penalty, yeah. So like I think you have to field a kickoff because the other team, but a punt you don't have to field, and so I think lots of times people are looking for the big return, and the Hardman return was a big return 2 weeks ago, but it does. The risk versus reward the risk is much higher than the reward. Like there's
they already had the one reward last week, right? So like your odds of getting rewarded again are probably lower.
I guess people think, well, if we got the reward last week, we're going to keep building, we're going to keep getting rewarded, but I think I think you're more accurate. Like it's a lottery ticket, and you aren't going to win the lottery most of the times, even though you do win it occasionally. You're probably better off saving that money and
it seems like it's worse than a lottery ticket. It's like you're thinking that it's I mean, it can really hurt you though, right? So it's like not it's more like putting it in a crazy stock than putting it in a bank account, right? So
yeah, it's like rolling, if you think,
you can actually be really hurt by it though, not just do I win a lot or do I not win anything. It's like it actually, the low is much lower, because it's like you can actually be damaged. If you turn the ball over rather than, get a touchdown. The difference between the high reward and the worst negative result is much worse than just not returning it at all. I think anyway. That's my
Yeah, I can see that. I think A, teams punt it too much, and B, teams try to return punts and kicks too much too. And like, just I would say eliminate as much special teams play as possible, because it's like the Chiefs had a big punt return in the Super Bowl with Tony, of course. So that was so like I think they remember these big good things that they do, but even with those good things, I think it still the bad things outweigh all those good things, because it's Sky Moore dropping one, or then Richie James drop one this year. We've had Nicole Hardman now drop a punt this year, so they're on pace to do that, like as many times or more than they did last year. So,
which was too many times.
And even I guess even when the Chiefs were doing the best, like you remember that game with in the playoffs, the divisional game against the Texans, when Tyreek Hill went to retrieve one of those punts early, he dropped it, and that led to one of the touchdowns that the Texans scored when they went up 24-0. So
yeah,
there's a lot. It happens a lot. They've gotten more drops that have turned into, I'd say, drops within the 20-yard line than they've had big punt returns probably over the last few seasons. But you remember the big ones,
right?
Speaking of big ones,
maybe one more thing though. Taylor Swift was not there. Did that factor in? Seems like she's been there.
It seems like Kelsey hasn't had a great season when Swift hasn't been there, but it's still a small sample size. But yeah, maybe it was a little worrisome. I don't know if Taylor is going to go to Frankfurt to watch the Chiefs play the Dolphins, but maybe she should. Kelsey went to the World Series. Do you think that was a mistake? I think Nick Lowry was in the news saying that probably was a mistake going in there on Friday night rather than.
I don't know. Yeah,
when the game's on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, I don't know. He's enough of an international figure. I think he can do whatever he wants at this point. But you'd hope that he's focused on the game. He still was the Chiefs' leading receiver, even though he went to that game now. So
yeah, he had a couple of plays where it seemed like he just fell down for some reason, and he didn't have a great outing, but he wasn't terrible. But like, the Chiefs were just off, and it seems like the Chiefs have been off a lot this year, and you wonder what the cause is. Is it just they don't care until they get to the playoffs now, or is it something deeper and more of a problem? And it's one of those things like, well, we have to wait till next week to really to see, or a couple weeks to really see what's going on, because the Chiefs tend to play to the level of their opponents, and in this game they really played poorly,
even below the level of their opponent.
Yeah, well, when you turn the ball over that much, that's what happens. And turnovers are kind of random anyway, so like, you can't. I think if you win, you people say, oh, we got to create more turnovers, but turnovers are fairly random. They tend to even out, and the teams that rely on turnovers to win games are usually the ones that are not winning the Super Bowl, because there was a playoff game or some other game down the road where they didn't get those turnovers, and because they didn't get those turnovers, they couldn't win. And it's the teams that can win despite having a lot of turnovers. And the Chiefs were still in that game most of the time. Had had Moore caught that pass, this guy Moore could have just caught that one pass. But should we talk about maybe the other games this past week that we found interesting?
Sure.
Maybe talk about our bets. Like the biggest game probably was the one where we were opposed to one another. The San Francisco-Cincinnati game, and this is maybe a game that will affect the Chiefs down the road, because the Chiefs will play Cincinnati later in the season. Cincinnati looked pretty bad early on. Joe Burrow was injured, kind of mysteriously. There wasn't much information about his calf injury. The offense for the Bengals looked terrible. But now they're starting to heat up. They won 3 in a row. They beat the 49ers. Now suddenly the 49ers have lost 3 in a row. So I ended up thinking that the 49ers would win that game. They were favored by 4.5. I actually thought that maybe Sam Darnold was going to play instead of Brock Purdy, who had the
Yeah.
concussion. Do you think the 49ers would have been better with Darnold? Purdy's kind of gone downhill the last few games. Is this just a sophomore slump, or is it something maybe he's maybe not the long-term answer? And
I don't. It's hard to say. He his like last several drives were not so were like really quite bad. I think actually he had a couple like an interception and then another interception that ended up being called back on a penalty by the Bengals, but then he like immediately turned it over on a sack fumble anyway. So not a great way to end the game. Maybe he was still feeling some of the effects of the concussion and maybe just wore out and got tired at the end of the game and wasn't so great. It's really hard to say on that one too, but I think his numbers were okay outside of those last couple drives.
yeah,
I'm not sure that it's really that concerning yet, but it does seem like I'm not sure why they didn't just go ahead and play Darnold in that particular game.
yeah, you'd think maybe just getting him ready because you want, just in case something happens to Purdy later, you want to have your backup playing, and it seems like that happens a lot to the 49ers, so why not put him in there? But yeah, this was a game that you predicted correctly. I don't know if you thought Cincinnati would win outright, but I think you thought at least they'd keep it close. I missed that one, but you got it right. Was that your thinking? Did you think that Cincinnati was going to win, or why did you see this coming and I didn't?
So my thought was that this was probably a game that Cincinnati kind of had circled, and they may be like middling through their season thus far, and maybe this was like what they planned on, having like their coming out game, basically getting right. That's kind of what I was expecting.
So it was more important for the Bengals than it was for the 49ers.
And yeah, I think it was more about the Bengals, establishing themselves as being a contender again, and not maybe just like falling off into irrelevance after their not so great start. I kind of think it's probably gonna, like, the Bengals are probably gonna be like, in the discussion with about being the number one seed here in another week or two, depending on how they keep playing like that, at least anyway. So
yeah, well, the Chiefs are still technically the number one seed in the AFC.
sure.
The Dolphins next week's opponent, number 2 seed. The Chiefs have beaten number 3. Jacksonville, Baltimore is also 6-2, so they're the top 4 right now. But yeah, I think actually Seattle is leading the division now in the NFC West ahead of the 49ers, which I don't think any of us saw coming 3 weeks ago.
No.
So that's an interesting development. I don't really think, again, it's the NFC. It's not as deep. I don't think the 49ers really have much to worry about. I think as long as they finish 10-7, they're going to be comfortably in the playoffs, maybe even 9-8. They don't have to worry a whole lot in the NFC. But the AFC's heating up. How about, so you got your 49ers Bengals pick correct? Did you get any other of your locks of the week correct?
I did not. Yeah. We may as well just go ahead and throw this one out there, just because we already talked about the game anyway. I had the Chiefs -7.5 Denver. That didn't go anywhere close to that way. Chiefs not only did not cover, they lost by 15 points. So
yeah, on my big board, I had the Chiefs winning. I was a little skeptical that they would win by 7.5. I didn't really want to bet against the Chiefs because I thought the Chiefs would win anyway. But
yeah,
it turned out this was one of those games where they wouldn't play well and didn't win. I like you. I was 1-2 in my locks of the week, so I think 2 games over 500 for the season now. I think I am
you're 13-11 now.
13-11, yeah.
What was your second pick, though?
My second pick, the one I got right, was Minnesota against Green Bay. Again, I saw no reason why Green Bay should be thought of as even that close. And The only reason I think maybe Green Bay kept it as close as it was is because Kirk Cousins got hurt, but still they lost by 2 touchdowns. So
Yeah.
looks like he's going to be out the rest of the season with a Aaron Rodgers-esque Achilles tendon tear. So the older quarterbacks, two of the older starting quarterbacks in the league, maybe outside of Russell Wilson, each have torn their Achilles tendons this season, which is rough. But Minnesota won 24-10, 2 touchdowns, easy game for them. I don't know why they were only favored by 1.5. Minnesota, I think, they're 4-4 now. If Cousins had been healthy, I think you could say Minnesota is really pushing for a high playoff seed, even though they got through a tough part of their schedule where, one of those losses was against the Chiefs. They lost, some tough games early on, but they beat the 49ers. So they're a good team, but they, now they maybe one of the big deadline deals they traded for Joshua Dobbs. Do you think Minnesota going forward is a playoff team in the NFC with Dobbs, or perhaps a combination of backups in Minnesota? Or was that just their season and they should probably rebuild because they probably won't also have Cousins around next year either?
Well, their conference, their division opponents aren't that strong, so chances are they're probably still a playoff team, even with, even if there's a gigantic letdown between Cousins and if it's Dobbs or if somebody else has to come in too. Man, I don't know.
Do you think Dobbs was the right pick to trade for? Or would it have been maybe somebody like Ryan Tannehill, because Tannehill looks like he's on the outs now in Tennessee, and Will Levis had a great game against the Falcons, his coming out party.
Yeah.
Tannehill or somebody that would have been a better choice than Dobbs, or is that more draft capital maybe than they wanted to give up?
Maybe. I mean, Tannehill's price tag was probably pretty expensive. Dobbs' price tag's probably not terribly much at all.
Well, I think Tannehill's in the last year of his contract, so
Yeah.
it's a little bit of more money for 1 year, but Dobbs, I guess, has also shown that he can come in and win games even with only a week to prepare. So maybe that's another. Dobbs is a smart, aerospace engineering kid, so maybe he is able to pick up on offenses and things like that more quickly than the average quarterback. I think you think Tannehill's probably pretty good at that by now too. So
yeah.
But yeah, Minnesota though ended up winning easily against Green Bay. Green Bay is really bad, so I thought they would be really bad this year. I think you had also thought they'd be really bad this year, but they started out pretty good, and that was kind of surprising.
Yeah.
And
yeah. What did we had them at pretty low win totals.
I think I had them at 5-12 on the year, and you might have.
I only had them at 4 wins. So
4-13. So I think they're 2-6 now, or 2-5.
Yeah,
I don't know if they've had a bye or not. I think they started 2-0, or at least 2-1.
Yeah.
How about your third pick?
They are 2-5. Yeah.
2-5.
But yeah, the Vikings are, 2 games out of the division lead Lions, but I think as of right now, I think they're technically a playoff team, 4-4. So
yeah, they're at least in it in the NFC.
Yeah.
I think they'll probably be in it till the end,
even with a backup who they're going to have for the rest of the season now, because Cousins isn't going to make it back before the playoffs.
No,
or through the playoffs.
No, unless he has an Aaron Rodgers kind of delusional recovery.
Possible. You don't know. And I believe that Rodgers has already reached out to Cousins, so he may pass along all of the secrets for a speedy recovery to Cousins. So.
Well, Cousins is very conservative and religious, so I don't think politically they and spiritually they match up terribly well with one another. But we'll see. You saw the quarterback docu series on Netflix. Did you see that?
I didn't see
Kirk.
it.
Yeah, Kirk is very straight laced and like not as I don't know if he's a Republican, but like sort of classic old time kind of Republican kind of guy, compared to Rodgers is kind of weird and out there. He's not a straight arrow like Cousins is. Cousins got where he was because he worked hard and he ate his vegetables and said his prayers and does things like that. That's not the Rodgers way. I'm sure he worked hard too and did some of these similar things, but it was a different kind of route to success. Cousins, he Rodgers is immensely talented, and Cousins is like a hard worker who is talented but he's a grinder. It's a different kind of they're kind of polar opposite personalities, I think. But maybe when it comes to medicine and vaccine denial, they're on the same page. I don't know, but
I think as a professional athlete, your goal is to get back on the field as fast as you can, and you may be willing to go, a lot further outside of what your maybe typical comfort level is to try to get back there faster. I think.
Yeah, snake oil maybe appeals to a wide swath of people in this country. What? How about your third pick of the week?
My third pick was another surprising outcome, I guess, but again, a road favorite letting me down. Houston, I'd -3.5 at Carolina, and Carolina chose this game to actually play well enough to get their first victory of the season. So I dropped that bet then also.
Yeah, I think maybe we were thinking Houston a little bit. We were putting a little too much on Houston. Houston kind of won some games because they played bad teams, and they themselves are not a great team. So you can't count on a not great team to beat every bad team. And I think and so they ended up losing. And I think I'm sure this win meant a lot more to Carolina than it would have to Houston, because Carolina was kind of embarrassed that I think that they had not won any games, and they had Bryce Young, who was supposed to be, at least in a lot of people's opinions, to be the best quarterback of the draft, and he has not so far turned out to be that. Stroud has played a lot better, although Stroud hasn't been spectacular. He's had kind of steady performances that have his team to victory. But yeah, I had also thought that Houston was going to win, but you don't want to hang your hat on bad teams, and maybe that's what I did in my third pick, where I hung my hat on Pittsburgh, who still is a winning team, and they're in the playoffs at the season end of the day. But they were a home underdog, so the opposite of you had a road favorite let you down. I had a home underdog let me down. Pittsburgh, I had it +2.5 to Jacksonville. I still don't think Jacksonville's very good. Somehow they're 6-2 on the year now. They looked pretty bad against the Chiefs. The Chiefs didn't play very well, and they easily beat the Jaguars in Jacksonville. So I don't see. I guess Travis Etienne has had some good games, but they've beaten. Jacksonville's won a lot of games so far this year, but I still don't see them as being, like I don't think of them, 6-2, but I don't think of them as being in the class of Miami or being in the class of Baltimore or Cincinnati or even Buffalo. Even though they beat Buffalo, I don't see them as being as good as any of those teams. I see them more as a kind of maybe Cleveland level, Pittsburgh level, that kind of second I'm actually probably more afraid of the Chargers than I am of the Jaguars for the Chiefs, because the Chargers always play, even though they didn't this past week or a week ago. Play the Chiefs is tough, but still, I thought that Pittsburgh would at least be able to keep it close. They just couldn't score enough points they kept, the defense played well. Jacksonville only scored 20, but I thought Pittsburgh would be able to score 20-ish, and they only scored 10, so they couldn't cover the spread. So I missed that one. So I was 1-2. You were 1-2, and we'll move on to next week, and hopefully we'll improve our shoe-ins. Where do you stand so far on our locks of the week?
So you're 13-11 +$200 for the season. I'm 11-13 -$200.
-$200. So okay, so 400 apart. It's a little bit like that it's the opposite of that in our big board, where you are way ahead. And you had a great week this week. You were up over $1,000. I lost over $1,000 this week, betting every spread, every over under, and every money line bet. So this week, on the whole, even though it didn't work out in our locks for you, turned out to be a good week for you. What do you think led to your success this week?
So I know last week we didn't really talk about this part of it in last week's episode, but I had a personally disaster week last week. The league went totally different from what it had been doing in the weeks before, and I didn't change my strategy at all. I actually followed your suggestion about not looking at last week and making the picks anyway, which I thought was surprising that it actually turned out that well this week. So there must have been maybe the league realized that the games were ridiculous last week and they figured out how to make them look not so ridiculous for week 8.
I think they look pretty ridiculous this week if you look at them individually. Like the Chiefs game looked really awful. If you all
Yeah.
called that Jets Giants game, oh man, that was a bad game.
Well,
24 punts. There
yeah,
were we figured out before we went on the air today that there were 6 completed passes by
by the Giants.
G-men,
The
and
two Giants quarterbacks combined.
they had 7 yards total passing. Is that correct? I
Yes.
don't see how that could be correct, but it is. And so that was 13 total yards plus completions, and they had 13 punts. So
Yeah.
together, I don't. Unless you're in a punting fantasy league of some sort, this would be the worst game you could have. I think a punting fantasy game would be pretty fun.
Yeah. There were a total of 24 punts in the game, I think. And yardage wise, it looked pretty hilarious at least anyway. So like the Giants punter, Jamie Gillen, 13 punts, 549 total yards of punting.
A lot of punting.
Thomas Morstead for the Jets, 11 punts, 529.
Ooh, he had some big punts.
So over 1,000 punting yards
Yards.
in the game, Mike.
Yeah, I'm in a group on Facebook called the Dull Men's Group, where people post the most boring things that they can find, and I'm surprised that this game was not featured more on my Dull Men's Group because it was quite dull. Other than the injury to Tyrod Taylor, which unfortunately is another kind of bad luck injury that he's had, he's been able to lead the team to some competitive games, and that was one of the games where I thought the Giants were actually going to win outright against the Jets.
And they probably should have.
Yeah, even with the Tommy DeVito, Danny's illegitimate son, he played worse than I would have. He played as badly as I would have played out there. Negative was it -1 yards passing on two completions.
2 of 7, -1 yards. Was sacked twice.
I could have had that line almost. I probably would have been sacked way more times.
He did have 4 rushes for 12 yards and scored a touchdown though.
Yeah, I wouldn't have had that part. I would have had fewer rushing yards for
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, you could have, you don't know. I mean,
I would have been injured probably like Tyrod after 1 or 2 hits, and
or would it have been like the Kirk Cousins or Aaron Rodgers injury on a non-contact sort of.
I could have. Yeah, that's what I could have. Yeah, that would at least. I don't know if I would have left with
worried about the hit and then stumble a bit and blow out the
offense. So. Would that have been more dignified or less dignified? I don't know. It would have been really bad out there with me, but I think I could have at least completed a couple of passes behind the line of scrimmage if I could, given modern technology. But I'm sure I would have been just nailed several times. They would just blitz the hell out of me, and I wouldn't have been able to do anything. So
yeah.
But I'm sure Tommy DeVito is a much better player than I ever could hope to be. But this stat line is one where a lucky fan, I don't think, would have done that much worse. But he had a rushing touchdown, which kept the Giants in the game. They probably still should have won it, but that was an ugly game. Is there anything else we want to talk about when we talk about week 8? We had some ugly games. The Chiefs played one of those. Do we just want to move on and hope that this is not going to be repeated?
Yeah, I think that's the plan. Yes.
Okay. Speaking of ugly games, we have an ugly game going on in Game 4 of the World Series. The Rangers are ahead 10-1 after 7 innings. I'm going to confidently predict that the Rangers will win this game and go up 3-1 in the World Series. Do you think the Rangers are going to win the World Series? And if so, are you happy about that, or do you think the Diamondbacks are gonna claw back in it, win 3 straight?
Well, it seems like the Rangers got a couple pieces of bad news. I think before the game they had Max Scherzer and Adolis Garcia both are going to miss the rest of the series with injuries. But then immediately scoring 10 runs in the next game definitely helps their cause. They only need to win one game. You think even with the injuries, they should be able to get one more victory. And it does seem like maybe Arizona is running out of pitchers because it seemed like they did essentially a bullpen game today.
Yeah, it seems like the Rangers are playing the 2023 Kansas City Royals today with their bullpen. Not the 2015 Royals bullpen or 2014 Royals bullpen, but the current Royals bullpen with the opener and Josh Young's having another good game. He's there's everybody's hitting well today for the Rangers. It seems like
especially Marcus Semien, I think had the couple of big hits and 5 RBIs.
For 5 RBIs for Semien, 3 hits for Young, 2 home runs. Seager's got a home run. Simeon's got a home run. So yeah, it's been a good game for basically the top of the lineup and kind of the lower half of the lineup.
Yeah,
kind of spotty. Jankowski's had a good game too. So, but so it looks like I think I had wanted the Rangers to win this series because the Rangers hadn't won a World Series yet, and they had a better regular season than the Diamondbacks. So I thought they were more deserved potential champions. So we'll see. I think probably by the time we meet next week, this will be all wrapped up. So we will see if the Rangers do in fact become the 2023 Major League Baseball World Champions.
They just added another run while you were finishing that statement.
11-1. Congratulations.
Yes. Yeah. Anything else to add on the?
I don't really have anything else to baseball. I don't have any Royals news because the Royals new stadium has kind of been dead since the Jackson County sicked its lawyers on the Royals, and so there's no new news about whether it's going to be a downtown stadium or a North Kansas City Pro Bowl site stadium, or maybe they're just going to get stuck in Kauffman Stadium for a while longer, which I wouldn't mind. I think Kauffman's a great place, but the current Royals ownership does not want to be there long term. So we'll see what happens there. Again, we can't have to wait until after the World Series until winter. The Royals enter in the rest of the baseball enters the winter meetings and kind of hot stove era for things to happen. And so I don't know if the Royals are going to be big free agent buyers. They're going to just continue the youth movement. What they're going to do, I'm sure they're going to do a lot of head scratching moves that we can talk about in coming weeks, but still have to wait a little while longer. And it's not like any Royals are going to be winning these off-season awards, either the Cy Young or the MVP that they,
I don't think they ended up in any of the Gold Glove races either. So because they've already announced the final 3s, I think, for all the positions, and I don't think they were on any of the lists. So. Well, no Royals fans are sweating any.
Well, speaking of sweating, are you worried about the Chiefs in Germany? I guess schwitzing, maybe we should say. I guess that's more Yiddish, I think, than German. But are you predicting a Chiefs win over the Dolphins? I think the Chiefs are favored by 2.5 points.
Yeah.
Or 2 to 2.5.
So far, it's looked like the Dolphins haven't played well against tougher teams, and the Chiefs will still be one of the toughest teams they've faced. So I don't know that they really have that great of a defense. And if the Chiefs offense shows up at all and it's not the drops and the turnovers, then the Chiefs should be competitive in the game. I don't know how they don't do at least okay in it anyway.
Yeah, I think that I'm not maybe that worried. I am a little bit. I think I don't know if I mentioned this on air or it was before. I think the Chargers are a very similar team to the Dolphins, and I think the Chiefs played well against the Chargers earlier this season. Hopefully, they can do the same against the Dolphins. They have similar types of quarterbacks, similar weapons on the outside, big time receivers, flashy, maybe not the best defenses, but also good running games as well. So I like the Chiefs' chances, but I could also see the Chiefs losing and then having to retool, rebuild, regroup when the bye comes around. But I did not make the Chiefs one of my locks of the week, though. I'm not touching that game as one of my locks. Are you?
I bet on them last week and it didn't work out, so I'm staying away from them this week.
Yeah, I don't like to bet on them, but we have to for our big board. But as long as if I can stay away from them, I tend to find the games that I care about so little, and the winner, it doesn't matter to me. So that's what I've been trying to find, and that's served me well, kind of, in these locks of the week so far. So my first lock of the week for week 9 is Seattle at Baltimore, and I don't have a prediction on the spread for Baltimore. Seattle, I think, is an underdog of
5.5 points.
5.5 points. Yeah, I don't have a say on one side or the other on that, but the over-under is 42.5. There are a lot of low over-under games this week. 42.5 is actually one of the kind of medium to higher over-under scores. And I think that game is still going to go over. I think Baltimore and Seattle can both put up some points. I think both of them have offenses that are pretty good. Their quarterbacks are both fairly healthy. They have good receivers, good running games. I think their defenses are okay, both sides, but I think maybe Seattle's defense is a little stronger than Baltimore's, but Baltimore's offense is probably a little stronger than Seattle's. So I think, I could see it to be a 27-20 type game, 24, 22 type of game. And so that both of those would be over the 42.5. So I like, or even 31, 28 even. I wouldn't be surprised if this game that high. So I like the over 42.5 Seattle Baltimore. That's my first lock of the week.
Well, even if it's super lopsided, like Baltimore Detroit was a few weeks ago, Baltimore may carry enough points to get it near that over, on their own.
True. 38-6 was 44. So
yeah.
And Seattle beat Detroit on the road. So Seattle has had some tough road games already this year, and done well. And they're leading the division in the West. So yeah, I like some points to be scored there. How about your first lock of the week?
My first lock, I'm going to what's probably a pretty ugly game on a Thursday night slate, Tennessee, Pittsburgh. I kind of like what we saw from Levis last week, and I'm actually going to take Tennessee +3 at Pittsburgh. That's another one of those really low over-under games, though, too. At 36.5 points, it's one of the lowest of the season, I believe, over-under numbers.
Yeah, there's a 36.5 this week. There's a 37 and a 30 and 2 37.5s on the slate. So
I think there's 5 sub 40 games this week.
Yeah, the over-under, I think on average you said was 41.6 ish. Yep. So this is what maybe the lowest totals of the season. Mm-hmm. And you like Tennessee to keep I like Tennessee close at least
a little bit. I dislike Pittsburgh more. So it's almost as much betting against Pittsburgh as it is betting on.
Are you falling back into an old habit where you said you don't want to think about last week when you're betting these week's bets? Are you looking too much at last week and previous the previous session of games?
I don't think so. I think I'm it's more about looking at The quality of play that I've seen for Pittsburgh this season has been way less than what their record has been.
So they're lucky to be where they are, and you think
And
that
I
the
think they have
luck's going to
more
run out.
room to drop in this. They're only, a 3-point favorite in this game is actually that they are a 3-point favorite is a little surprising to me. So I might actually have taken this if it was the other way even.
Yeah, I feel the same way about my second lock of the week. I see a team. I'm betting the Rams at the Packers. The Packers, like the Steelers, are favored by 3 points at home, even though it's clear that maybe more so even than with the Steelers, it's clear that the Packers are not a very good team. And the Rams have had some trouble lately. But they've scored a lot of points. And they scored even though they got blown out by Dallas last week, they still scored a lot of points. And Dallas is a much better team than Green Bay is. And so Green Bay is somehow favored by 3. I would have thought maybe the Rams would actually be favored in this game. And so I'm going with the Rams easily here. I could, of course I could be wrong, but I think the Rams are. I did well last week with Green Bay at home. I predicted the Vikings would win easily, and so now I'm predicting that the Rams will at least keep it within 3 and probably win outright. I'll probably pick them on the money line as well. So I like Rams +3 over the Packers. Stafford is healthy. The Rams have, Cooper Kupp had a bad game against Dallas, but he's healthy-ish again. Puka Nacua has turned out to be a pretty good receiver. They have a lot of weapons. The running backs have been depleted, but they still have Darrell Henderson, who's been around for, it seems like, years and years now on that team. So I like the Rams to probably win outright at Lambeau, but at least easily cover that 3-point spread.
Is this as much betting against Green Bay as it is betting on the Rams for you?
Basically, it is really. I was talking myself into why the Rams are pretty good, even though they haven't played terribly. The record doesn't quite indicate that this year.
Yeah.
I think they're 3-4 or something like that. But I still,
and they lost to the Steelers 2 weeks ago.
Yes, they did, and 3-5. The Rams are 3-5, but I still, I still think of them as a much better team than the Green Bay Packers at this point in the season. So I like the Rams. How about your second lock of the week?
My second pick is maybe actually all 3 of my picks are as much picking against a team as I am picking for a team. This one I'm going with a team that I don't really like at all, but they seem to be at least playing okay for the most part. I've got Raiders -2.5 at home versus the New York Giants. Well, I don't know if the Giants have a quarterback.
Yeah, it could be Daniel Jones. It could be,
and I don't know that it matters which guy it is. I don't think any of them fare very well. The Raiders defense seems to be like pretty decent, except for that one game 2 weeks ago that was not so good.
And the Raiders can score some points. I think I think the Raiders.
But I don't think the Giants can score points. So that's maybe
yeah.
So,
yeah.
Even if the Raiders play poorly, I still think they can win by a field goal.
I tend to agree with that one too. Yeah, I like the Raiders there. This is one of those things where we have trouble scoring points from the Giants, even when they're healthy. They haven't been the only team they could score points against really was the Arizona Cardinals, and the Cardinals are much less powerful than they were even a couple weeks ago because they've traded away their starting quarterback in Joshua Dobbs. And Kyler Murray's still not there. So my third pick of the week involves the Arizona Cardinals, and that is the Arizona-Cleveland game. I'm not making a pick on the spread. I think Cleveland will win that game, and I would probably pick Cleveland on. I think they're favored by 7.5. I don't know who the quarterback for Cleveland is going to be either. I don't know if it's going to be Deshaun Watson or somebody else. But I do think the game's going to be low scoring, especially on Arizona's side. Clayton Tune, the 5th-round draft pick, is going to be the starting quarterback. The over-under number is 37.5. I think it's going to be under. I probably think Cleveland's probably going to win something like maybe 24-7 or something like that, or some 20, even
Maybe zero. I mean,
30-3, something like that. Those would all be under 37.5. So I like Cleveland, Arizona to be a low scoring slog, maybe not as many punts as the Giants Jets snooze fest, but I think it's going to be a low scoring game under 37.5. How about your third and final lock of the week, Dr. Scaff?
I'm going to the Monday night game. It's Chargers at the New York Jets. Chargers are somehow only favored by 3 points on the road. So I don't know where the Jets are scoring points at all in this one again. The Chargers offense is at least decent enough to put up some points. And again, I don't know where the Jets are coming up with almost anything. So I expect the Chargers to cover by at least a field goal.
Okay, that makes sense
By
to me
more
too.
than a field goal, covering the spread, the 3 point spread. Yeah.
That makes sense to me. I could see the Jets winning a really ugly game, but I think the Chargers really need to keep pace in the AFC West and try to make a playoff push, and Brandon Staley wants to keep his job. So I think I could see I could definitely see that as well. Your three bets run from Thursday, not Thursday to Monday night. So you have a long spread. I think all of mine were Sunday games. So my locks of the week are much more concentrated
Yes.
than yours are. But that doesn't necessarily mean my locks of the week will be any better than yours. We'll have to wait until next week to find out here on the One Trip Power Hour. Do we have
These
anything
are all
else?
in the noon slot even.
They're all new. Yeah, they're all early games. Those are where the worst games typically are, because
No.
there's just the games that are interesting to local fans for the most part. Um, do you, uh, do you have anything else that you want to talk about in for week 9 or week 9 action?
Is the which game do you think is the marquee game outside of the Germany game?
I
Is it the I just lost Dallas Philly? That's probably
That's a good one. Buffalo Cincinnati is the other one. I think
Buffalo Cincinnati, yeah.
those are the two good games.
That's
I
the Sunday. The Buffalo Cincinnati is the Sunday night game.
I like both of those a lot. I think maybe Buffalo Cincinnati simply because it's an AFC game, and I'm a Chiefs we're Chiefs fans, so maybe it's a little more interesting to us. Also, maybe because of the Damar Hamlin situation and the playoff loss that Buffalo suffered last year. So there's a little bit more of a rivalry that's not a kind of normal rivalry like the Dallas Philadelphia is a division game. They hate each other and they have for years.
Yeah.
But the Buffalo Cincinnati rivalry is kind of a newer one, and both of these teams are kind of desperate to stay in the playoff hunt. And I think a fourth loss this early in the season would really hurt one of those teams. With Dallas, Philadelphia, maybe if Dallas wins, that means that they're in contention for the division. But Philadelphia is still an easy playoff team. I think Dallas, even if they lose, matters. I don't think that game matters quite as much as it does as the Buffalo Cincinnati matters in the playoff race.
Yeah. Yeah. And they'll play Dallas and Philly will play each other again anyway, right? So
yeah. It'll be a great game.
Buffalo won't meet unless they meet in the playoffs.
Yeah, and if Dallas wins that game, though, that's going to be the story of the week, because everybody has wanted Dallas to knock off Philadelphia, at least from a kind of pundits, because the Cowboys for some reason still are the most popular team on ESPN and things like that, even though they haven't really been that relevant for since Troy Aikman and Emmitt Smith retired. They haven't had a team that's really good since then. But those are two really good games. I think last week we had only one really good game here. I think the Chiefs, the Chiefs Dolphins is also really, so there's at least three really good games I think on the schedule this week. So that's nice. I think Tennessee Pittsburgh is actually a pretty good game for Thursday, even though even it's a good kind of whet the appetite sort of matchup. I think two, especially two kind of hard nosed teams with young quarterbacks now that could do something, and so this is a more interesting week to me matchup wise than the week before.
But really, it's those three games: Chiefs, Dolphins, uh, Philly and Dallas, and Cincinnati, Buffalo. They're making up. I mean, they're the ones that are pulling the over/under numbers much higher, because I think if you took those three out, the over/under number for the week is considerably lower. Even it's under 40 if you took those three games out.
Seattle Baltimore is a pretty good game too by the records. Even though I think nobody really is paying attention too much to Seattle, and Baltimore is, people are kind of waiting until they play some better teams later in the season, but those are both potentially playoff teams as well. So there's four games with teams with winning records in both of them, on playing against one another today. So
and those would be four of the five highest over/under number games if you add that Seattle Baltimore. Everything else is like 40 or 40-ish or less.
Yeah, Indiana Carolina is the outlier there with a 44.5 over/under. I like Indianapolis probably in that game, but I don't really.
Who knows?
No.
Indy was supposed to have a decent defense, and in the last couple of weeks they've allowed 100 points in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. Is Richardson coming back, or is it still gonna be the Gardner Minshew experience?
I think he's out for the year. I think he had to have a shoulder surgery.
Okay.
So I think he's done for the season, and yeah, running back, I'm not sure that they've
figured out whether it's Moss or they tailor all that money, but Moss is still really doing well. So
yeah. So I'm not sure.
Well, we'll find out more next week what will happen in week 9, and we'll be able to recap all of it on our following installment of the Morning Track Power Hour. You have anything else to add this week, Dr. Scaff, or should we begin our wrap up
Our Halloween episode that we did?
Halloween episode? Yeah, well, it's going to be November 2nd. By the time you guys see that, I believe that's All Souls Day in the Christian calendar. But close to the day of, Day of the Dead, All Saints Day, all these holidays that are beginning to lead us to Thanksgiving and the Christmas season. So Advent, and that's a Hanukkah. These winter holidays that I think are the best holidays. Halloween's a pretty good one, but I think once we get into Christmas, especially, that's the there's even from a secular purpose, I think it's the king of American holidays, because everything is going to be geared up the last 2 months towards that, for better or for worse. Although I remember seeing Halloween stuff in Walmart and places like that back in
July.
Right after 4th of July was over, you started seeing Halloween stuff. So
the 6th of July, all the Halloween stuff rolls out.
Halloween's becoming maybe the second most important American holiday, I think, in some ways.
I think a lot of it just because it's just such a long gap between the 4th of July and the next holiday. So it's just that there's a lot
of Labor Day doesn't
nothing
quite
to build up
to it.
It's not a commercial holiday though.
Yeah. Well, we have Veterans Day coming up too in a couple.
Another big commercial holiday.
Yes, since I'm working at the courthouse now, I get Veterans Day off. We're actually Veterans Day is on Saturday, so I get the observed Veterans Day off November 10th. So that's pretty sweet. I don't even have. It's not even real Veterans Day, but I still get the day off because I'm now a government employee. So it's pretty cushy.
Sweet.
Yes, just almost as sweet as the Morning Trek Power Hour, and this will be, of course, our sign off here, because we have nothing more to add. We've scraped the bottom of the barrel, I think, in terms of our analysis. And sometimes we go off on weirder tangents. We didn't really do that this week, but next week
Too depressed from the poor Chiefs play.
that's probably what it is. When the Chiefs do well, we're kind of giddy, and we can really talk about a lot of different strange happenings and things and old timiness. And we didn't have any trivia questions. We were just a little bit off. I think we were maybe also on the kind of Halloween sort of hangover. We ate all our candy, and now we're sort of in that sugar coma that you get. And so we'll be more active probably next week, especially if the Chiefs can pull off a victory in Frankfurt, in front of all those German fans. Do you think, maybe one question about the German fans, do you think they're going to all sing like they did last year, "Country Roads Take Me Home" by John Denver? Is that going to be the song?
Or will it be a different song?
It's maybe a Hasselhoff classic.
That's kind of what I'm hoping for.
The Hoff, maybe he'll make an appearance.
Maybe he's doing the national anthem.
Yeah, the German national anthem, or all of that, or maybe the U.S. and maybe we'll combine it into one seamless
Ooh.
German American
Mashup.
mashup. Yes,
Hopefully.
we'll have to wait next week to find out about that. But until then, I remain Dr. Mike Wortman, Esquire, as Dr. Andrew Scaff wants us to say every time now. He remains Dr. Andrew Scaff. We remain the Warning Track Power Hour. Please remain liking, or please start to like and or subscribe to our little podcast and or YouTube channel. And we appreciate your patronage and your viewership, listenership, and we wish you the best this weekend with your teams and your upcoming games. All of them are important, I know. And we will be back, as I said, next time to discuss all of these here on the One Track Power Hour. But until then, we bid you good day.